appointed stand part of the question, and I call the honourable member for Wills.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I also rise to speak on the Higher Education Support Amendment, extending the Student Loan Fee Exemption Bill 2021. And as previous speakers have highlighted, this extends the fee help loan and reduces student debt levels. And look, that's always a good move, Deputy Speaker, certainly, and that's why Labor supports this bill. But we should not let this distract us from the Coalition's long list of failures with respect to universities and the tertiary sector, and the long list of failures with respect to students, which have occurred time and time again during their period in government. The COVID crisis, of course, has impacted all Australian universities. In my own electorate of Wills, the impact has been quite severe. There are thousands of university students and who live in my electorate, and hundreds of academics and university workers from various university campuses like RMIT and University of Melbourne who live in my electorate. This past year, they've told me about their struggles, the job losses, the redundancies, the casual contracts not renewed, and students have told me that they can't study what they want to study because they don't want to be stuck with a lifetime of debt. But in many senses, these stories, as important as they are, have been somewhat white noise for this government. They just don't care. If they did, then this coalition government wouldn't have abandoned universities during the global pandemic. They wouldn't have abandoned students during a global pandemic. Instead of investing in our universities at this most critical time, instead of investing in our young people and their education, the coalition government cut university funding by around $1 billion a year. They just don't care. It's pretty obvious they don't care. Our sector, the university sector, was the first hit when international borders closed in March last year, and the university sector was crying out for help. And what did the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, do? He deliberately excluded public universities from JobKeeper. It was deliberate. He knew what he was doing. In fact, he changed the rules 3 times to exclude them. The result? 17,000 university jobs lost on this government's watch, and hundreds of courses cut on this government's watch. Every course cut is lost knowledge and lost opportunity. And the pain isn't over, Deputy Speaker. We expect another 21,000 job losses in the coming years. We're talking about academics, tutors, administrative staff, library staff, catering staff, ground staff, cleaners, security. Now, I touched on this a bit earlier, but this is what makes this so bad, and what makes it worse is that these decisions seem to be, in fact, indeed are, ideological. For degrees, and let me explain, Deputy Speaker, for degrees that this government doesn't like students studying, such as the arts, law, accounting, commerce, communications, the humanities, this government's policies and decisions have actually made it more expensive to study those degrees. This is despite the majority of the government members actually graduating with degrees in humanities. It's good enough for them when those educational opportunities are provided, largely by Labor governments over the decades. Good enough for them to get their degree, but when they're here making the decisions in this place, they shut it down and make it more difficult for young Australians to get the same degrees. Fees will more than double for people studying humanities, jumping from some $27,216 to $58,000 for a 4-year degree. That's a massive jump, Deputy Speaker, especially when you consider that when HECS was first introduced in 1989, students paid around $1,800 a year. Even with inflation over the last 30 years, this doesn't even come close to what they're paying now, or will have to pay now. The average student is now graduating with between $20,000 and $30,000 in debt, a number that just keeps going up and up and up. Now, this keeps students from wanting to or being able to go to university. It's a disincentive. And yet the government just don't care. They don't care. They do nothing about this. Nothing in the budget for universities, no plan, no vision, just cuts. And we're talking about cuts in a place where they actually should be investing, because all of the economic evidence tells us that investment in education, and particularly in higher education, actually leads to the growth of the economy. You create a base of knowledge for workers, innovative workers, educated workers who can actually contribute with that education, those outcomes, into business, entrepreneurship, and in all sectors of the economy, and it grows the economy. That's investment in the economy, not just spending. Last time Labor was in government, we had the vision and we did the work. After years of neglect by the previous Howard government, Labor, when it won power, boosted investment in universities from $8 billion in 2007 to $14 billion in 2013, by 2013. Under Labor, 220,000 more Australians got the opportunity for a university education. This included many who had to overcome disadvantage. During that period, financially disadvantaged student enrolments increased by 66%. Indigenous undergraduate student enrolments increased by 105%. Enrolments of undergraduate students with a disability were up by 123%. Enrolments of students from regional and remote areas up by 50% because of our policies. And we are ready to do the work again, Deputy Speaker, to invest in our universities and our education systems, because valuing education is actually about that quintessential Australian value, the fair go, giving everyone the equality of opportunity to get a good education. It's about preparing. When you value education, it's about preparing people for the jobs of the future, for the emerging industries, for advanced manufacturing and other sectors of the economy as we go forward into this hopefully post-COVID economic reconstruction. Valuing education actually makes us a stronger, smarter country. One of the great Labor traditions is giving everyone possible that fair go for all. And that's very much part of our commitment to investment in education, for all the reasons that I've described. The economic reasons, yes, but also the importance to society of people getting that opportunity to get an education, whether it's a liberal arts degree or a law degree or accounting or commerce or science. The value add when people get that education, the contribution that they can make, the ideas that they can bring to life because of their education, the untapped human potential that is residing within all of us, with all of our members of our society. Education opens up that door to opportunity. It gives people the opportunity to succeed in life based on their merit, based on their hard work. It opens up that door to opportunity. So making that ideal of equality of opportunity real, a reality, is what we're about. And I just don't see any of that commitment on the other side. I see lots of talking points. I see lots of, and I hear lots of spin and obfuscation about what they actually do, which is to cut education, which is to ideologically oppose the very idea, the fundamental idea of giving people that fair go. It wouldn't be otherwise. It can't be otherwise. Cutting universities by $1 billion a year. How else can you explain this government's ideological position around giving people a fair go by giving them an education, by giving them the opportunity for a good education? And more important than that, Deputy Speaker, no matter who you are, whatever your background, whether you're an Australian in remote and regional parts of this country, whether you're disadvantaged, whether you have a disability, whether you come from a migrant background, a new and emerging migrant background, whatever your gender, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your faith, whatever your cultural background, you should be given these opportunities like every other Australian should be given these opportunities. You should be able to get a good education in Australia. It's of critical importance. That's what I got. I got it as a migrant kid growing up in public housing because of Labor governments and their policies. I got an opportunity to get a good education and to go to university because of Labor governments, because of our commitment to that equality of opportunity. Bob Hawke, one of our great Prime Ministers of this country, was also the member for Wills, and I'm very proud and privileged to also represent the people of Wills like Bob did for all those years. I used to catch up with him, obviously, after I got elected, a couple of times before I did, but after I got elected. And I asked him once, I said, Bob, what is the policy area that you are most proud of, but that it's probably not as talked about as much in the public or in your biographies and all the other discussions around the legacy of your government? He said, Peter, I won't do the Bob Hawke voice, but he said, Peter, when I couldn't help myself. When I started as Prime Minister in 1983, about a third of students finished high school, matriculated, they used to call it. He said, because of the policies that my government put in place, by the end of my time as Prime Minister, it was almost 80%. And I said, Bob, I was one of those. I did Year 12 in 1990. If it wasn't for you and your government, I wouldn't have had those opportunities to go to university. Even though, given my socio-economic circumstances, my migrant background, I got a chance to do something with a good education. That's what it means to us, to invest in education, because it gives people that chance, the opportunity for them to shine based on their potential and to actually reach their full potential. But if it's too expensive, Deputy Speaker, if it's out of reach of people because they can't afford to take on that debt, then we are failing our citizens before we even begin.